Twin crypto kings exposed for chilling crimes after a decade of silence. For 10 long years, two brothers lived in luxury, showing off wealth most people only dream of. Hakeem and Jordan, young and rich from early crypto investments, were seen as smart, bold, and unstoppable. But behind their perfect image, a dark truth was hiding, one that would shock the world. They weren't just millionaires. They were monsters hiding in plain sight. Over the years, whispers started, stories about men who met them and vanished. No bodies, no clues. Just silence. Cops had no evidence. Families were left heartbroken and confused. Hakeem and Jordan looked untouchable. They were careful, always one step ahead. They used their charm to get what they wanted, and no one saw what was really going on. But the truth was darker than anyone guessed. It wasn't just about money or fame. They seemed to enjoy hurting others, and they were good at covering it up. Everything changed with one mistake. A tiny detail they missed. That slip-up opened a door that led to their downfall. Investigators found a crack in the armor, and what spilled out was horrifying. These two had used their fortune to live large, fast cars, private jets, exotic homes. But they also used it to hide crimes that no one could imagine. They weren't always like this. Born just minutes apart, they grew up close, sharing everything from clothes to secrets. In school, they were praised for being brilliant. But they also had a strange talent for manipulating people. They could lie, twist emotions, and escape consequences. As teens, while other kids thought about college or parties, they were studying wealth. Not savings accounts, real power. They read everything they could about business, investing, and new money systems. When crypto showed up, they saw it as their golden ticket. They made smart moves early. Bit by bit, their investments paid off. By their mid-20s, they were multimillionaires. Everyone wanted to know their secret. They were featured in interviews, praised in articles, invited to speak at major events. But while the world was clapping, the brothers were hiding something sick. Behind closed doors, they were hurting people and walking away like nothing happened. It took a decade, but their luck finally ran out. Now, the world knows the truth. Two brothers who built their fortune in the digital age and destroyed lives in the shadows. They talked about chasing dreams, breaking the mold, and lifting others up. On the surface, Hakeem and Jordan were role models, giving to charities, helping young business minds, and appearing as the face of modern success. But behind closed doors, their true desires started to show. Money wasn't enough. Fame wasn't enough. What really drove them was something deeper, the feeling of control, the ability to get away with anything. With all their wealth, they had access to places and people most could never reach. And what they used that access for was far more twisted than anyone guessed. They moved through elite circles, high-end clubs, luxury parties, secret gatherings. Politicians, celebrities, influencers all shared spaces with the twins, never knowing what they were really capable of. Then people started disappearing. At first, it seemed random. A guy went out, had a few drinks, and never came back. No signs of a struggle. No clues. Just gone. Police didn't see a connection. Friends thought maybe something bad had happened, but there was no proof. Over time, though, the cases started to line up. Same kind of victims. Same settings. Same endings, none. Still, no one pointed fingers at the twins. They had a clean image. Too clean. And for nearly 10 years, they stayed off the radar. But the truth was, something terrifying had been happening in the background. It all started with one name. A young man out at a club on a Friday night. He was having fun, laughing with friends. Around midnight, he sent a quick text. Met someone interesting. Heading out. That was the last anyone heard from him. No panic at first. It's normal for people to stay out late, lose track of time. But when a few hours turned into days, then weeks, people started to worry. His friends filed a missing person report. Police looked into it, but without any clear danger or evidence, they couldn't do much. The case went cold. Then it happened again. Another man. Same kind of night. Same outcome. At some point, it was too much to ignore. But there were no crime scenes. No cars left behind. No surveillance showing anything strange. Just silence. The men weren't just missing, it was like they were erased. And then something chilling appeared, a pattern. In a few of the club videos, two familiar faces showed up in the background, Hakeem and Jordan. People who worked at bars and lounges remembered their names. They had been nearby, often in the same VIP lounges. Close, but never close enough to link them to the crimes directly. Police started to look deeper. Dating apps, exclusive parties, hidden events, it all followed a routine. The brothers picked who they wanted carefully. They didn't rush. They blended in. They knew how to talk, how to make people feel comfortable. They knew how to hide their true intentions behind friendly smiles and expensive drinks. To the people they targeted, it felt like a lucky night. A chance to meet someone interesting. A lift in a fancy car. An invite to a private party. They never knew what they were walking into, but once someone left with Hakeem and Jordan, they were never heard from again. Families of the missing were left shattered, begging for answers, holding on to hope. Their faces showed up on posters taped to streetlights, pinned to cafe windows, and plastered across social media with one word, missing. But no clues ever surfaced. And the twins? They watched it all unfold. They'd returned to the same clubs where their victims had last been seen, blending into the crowd as if nothing had happened. Sometimes they even stood near search parties. Listening. Smiling. Offering help they never meant to give. They followed the news coverage. Read every headline. The rising number of disappearances only added fuel to their twisted excitement. Because while the world asked questions, they already knew the answers. And they knew no one was close to stopping them. For 10 long years, they remained invisible. Careful. Unreachable. But no one stays hidden forever. All it took was one mistake, one slip, and their carefully built empire began to fall apart. It started with one victim. One man who wasn't forgotten. Up until then, their approach had been silent. Clean. No bodies. No scenes. No trails. But over time, simply getting away with it wasn't enough. They needed more. More control. More fear. The game had to evolve. That's when the first body was found. In the early morning, a jogger running through a wooded path outside the city saw something unusual scattered among the leaves. At first glance, it looked like a pile of clothes. But when he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a man. Hands bound. Body bruised and battered. The injuries told a terrifying story, one of pain, control, and cruelty. The face was almost unrecognizable. Police were stunned. This wasn't random. This was intentional. Precise. Vicious. Whoever did this didn't just want the victim gone, they wanted him to suffer. They wanted to watch. And this was only the start. More victims followed. Each one worse than the last. Crime scenes once silent were now screaming. Deep cuts. Symbols carved into skin. Personal items left behind, not belonging to the latest victim, but to others who had vanished years before. The message was clear. This is a game. A hunt. And you're always one step behind. Investigators were forced to accept the truth. These weren't isolated acts. This was a pattern. And the killers were enjoying every second of it. Then the messages started. Anonymous notes sent directly to detectives full of twisted taunts and inside details. Some echoed the last texts their victims had sent. Met someone interesting. Heading out. It was personal. It was mocking. And it meant only one thing, the killers were watching them now too. In public, Hakeem and Jordan were still untouchable. They shook hands with mayors. Donated to nonprofits. Gave speeches at business forums. They were honored by magazines, celebrated by communities. No one saw the truth. Behind the suits and smiles, they were hiding something monstrous. And with every clean escape, they grew more confident. More reckless. But even the most careful predators eventually get careless. And this time, they chose the wrong man. One victim didn't stay silent. And that changed everything. For years, the police had nothing but theories and dead ends. But now they had a chance. The case files had piled up over the years, full of witness statements, club surveillance videos, and missing persons reports. But none of it had led anywhere. The victims kept disappearing. And when bodies were found, the scenes were horrifying. Still, with no clear evidence, the investigators were stuck in a frustrating loop, guesswork, theories, and endless dead ends. Hakeem and Jordan had mastered the art of vanishing without a trace. They were careful. Precise. Always 2 steps ahead. But then everything changed. A man was found stumbling down a street just before dawn. He was in his late 20s, barely conscious. His clothes were ripped. His body was bruised and cut. He had been beaten, tied up, drugged, but somehow he had escaped. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital. And after fighting through the confusion and trauma, he gave the police 2 names, Hakeem, Jordan. He had seen their faces. He had survived their nightmare. And now finally there was a living witness. His story was horrifying. He described a luxury penthouse. The brothers' strange way of talking, finishing each other's sentences, watching him suffer like it was a game. He remembered the way they laughed. The way they took their time. He'd only gotten out because one of them had forgotten to lock a door. He ran barefoot through the streets, desperate to survive. Now, investigators had their first real lead. With his testimony, detectives reopened old files and started looking again with sharper eyes. That's when they found it. A blurry video clip from a nightclub taken years ago. In the flashing lights and chaos, 2 men stood out, Hakeem and Jordan. Their faces were hard to make out, but there they were, present at the last known locations of several victims. More footage surfaced. Clues started lining up. Victims getting into black luxury cars, cash withdrawn from ATMs near upscale properties, private jet trips timed suspiciously close to the disappearances. Then came the digital trail. Even with all their precautions, Hakeem and Jordan hadn't completely erased themselves from the internet. Investigators uncovered disturbing online activity, searches about psychological torture, hidden forums filled with twisted conversations, cryptocurrency payments routed through offshore accounts. And then the worst discovery of all, photographs. Dozens of them. Some showed victims just before they vanished, smiling, unaware. Others were taken after, bound, bruised, terrified. Some photos captured the violence itself. It was undeniable. After 10 long years, the truth was finally laid bare. The twins couldn't hide anymore. The police knew it was time. They had to be taken down. But this wouldn't be a regular arrest. This had to be flawless. The task force was made up of elite officers trained, experienced, and prepared for anything. Hakeem and Jordan were sharp, dangerous, and unpredictable. If they sensed even a whisper of trouble, they could vanish in seconds. So, the raid had to be silent and perfect. At 4:27 a.m., a convoy of blacked-out vehicles moved quietly through the city. While most people were still asleep, the twins were wide awake inside their high-rise penthouse. Surveillance showed them relaxing, Hakeem scrolling on his phone, Jordan sipping a drink while watching the skyline. It was just another night of comfort and power. They had no idea what was coming. A flashbang shattered the silence. Seconds later, officers stormed in, weapons drawn, commands echoing through the halls. Get down. Hands where we can see them. But the twins didn't panic. They didn't fight. They didn't even flinch. They just raised their hands, calm, almost amused. It was like they had been waiting for this. Then came the real horror. During the sweep of the penthouse, officers discovered a hidden room behind a bookshelf. Inside were shelves lined with personal items, watches, wallets, jewelry, belongings stolen from their victims. And in a drawer, dozens of hard drives. Thousands of files. Photos. Videos. Some showed victims in their final moments, begging, bound, hopeless. Others were even worse. Full recordings of the acts themselves. Clear proof. Every detail. Every crime. This wasn't just murder. This was obsession. A decade-long ritual of power and control. And still, as they were handcuffed and led out of their glass tower, Hakeem and Jordan looked amused. No fear. No guilt. Just smirks. Cameras flashed as the world got its first look at the monsters behind the mask. The brothers exchanged a glance, a small, chilling look that unsettled even the toughest officers on the scene. They had killed for sport. For fun. And now, even in chains, they acted like they were still winning. The news spread like wildfire. Social media erupted. Every headline screamed the same thing. Two self-made crypto millionaires, once praised for their wealth and brilliance, had been hiding one of the darkest secrets imaginable. People were shocked. Outraged. Terrified. How had they gotten away with it for so long? How many victims were still undiscovered? And the worst thought, were there others like them? But the arrest was just the beginning. What came next would shake the world even more. The courtroom was packed. Journalists. Former business partners. Families of the victims. Everyone had gathered for what was now being called the trial of the century. For weeks, the world had been glued to the news, stunned as the truth unraveled about Hakeem and Jordan. Their wealth. Their charm. Their dark addiction to violence. They had lived in the spotlight, praised as self-made geniuses. But behind the scenes, they were monsters. Cold. Calculated. And now it was time to face justice. No one was ready for what came next. The trial began with the prosecution's case. And it hit like a tidal wave. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos. Online records. Phone logs. And, worst of all, the grisly trophies pulled from the twins' penthouse. One by one, the witnesses stepped forward. The first was the man who had escaped. The only survivor. He sat on the stand, shaking but determined. His voice cracked, but his message was clear. He spoke about the room. The pain. The mocking voices. The way the brothers watched him, not like he was a person, but like a toy they were slowly breaking. They didn't just want to kill me, he said. They wanted to destroy me. And they wanted to enjoy it. His words shattered the courtroom. Jurors looked away, some gripping their chairs, struggling to breathe through the horror. Then came the families. A mother held up a photo of her son, young, bright-eyed, full of promise. Gone now. Reduced to a name on a cold case file. Hakeem and Jordan were at fundraisers, she said. They shook hands with politicians. People called them brilliant. But all along, they were hunting our children. Her voice cracked. They smiled while we suffered. No one moved. No one breathed. 10 years of silence had collapsed into this moment. But the brothers? They showed nothing. Not guilt. Not sadness. Not even interest. If anything, they looked entertained. Then came the twist. Despite their lawyers begging them to stay quiet, Hakeem and Jordan decided to testify. The courtroom tensed. People leaned in. Would they deny it all? Blame each other? Pretend it wasn't real? No. They confessed. Not because they were sorry. Not because they wanted forgiveness. But because they wanted to be heard. Hakeem leaned forward, his tone calm, too calm. You think this was about money? He asked. About lust? Or power? He smirked. It was never about that. We didn't care who they were. We just liked it. A gasp rippled through the jury box. Jordan took over, like passing the baton in a well-practiced routine. It wasn't random, he said. It was a challenge. We wanted to see how long we could get away with it. The judge slammed his gavel. Are you saying you did all this for fun? Jordan shrugged, smiling. Define fun. Chaos broke out. The prosecutor slammed the table in fury. Victims' families cried out, voices cracking with rage and grief. The judge demanded silence. But Hakeem and Jordan just sat there smirking. Then came the most chilling moment of all. The prosecutor, trembling with barely contained anger, asked one final question. How many victims are still missing? Jordan looked at his brother. They shared a glance. Then he laughed. You'll never know. The courtroom went ice cold. Were there more? How many? Had the world only seen the tip of the iceberg? The answer would never come. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty. On every charge. Multiple life sentences. No chance of parole. The courtroom erupted. Some people cried. Some cheered. Others simply sat, frozen in disbelief. Justice had been served. But the truth? The full truth? That would always stay buried, locked behind the cold smiles of two brothers who had never felt a single shred of remorse. Some in the courtroom cried. Others clapped, finally feeling the weight of justice. And then there were those who simply sat frozen, too stunned to react. But Hakeem and Jordan? They didn't blink. No sorrow. No fear. Just that same unsettling smirk, like the whole thing still amused them. As if, even behind bars, they'd already won. Even with the verdict delivered, the nightmare wasn't over. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. How many more were there? Had the twins planned future victims? Had they hidden more evidence, more clues, more bodies? Authorities still believe the full story hasn't been uncovered. Somewhere out there, more victims may remain buried, their families still hoping for the truth. But the only two people who knew everything weren't talking. They took their secrets with them, locked away behind prison walls. And no matter how much time passes, no one may ever know the full scope of what they did. For 10 years, Hakeem and Jordan treated life like a twisted game. The world was their playground and the people in it were just pawns. Disposable. They smiled for cameras. Donated to causes. Made powerful friends. All while hiding their crimes in plain sight. They weren't the type to lurk in shadows. They stood center stage, celebrated, praised, unreachable. And that made them far more dangerous than anyone ever imagined. In the early days, there were whispers. Victims' friends who saw patterns. Families who begged for help. But the signs were missed. Dismissed. Case after case went cold. And the brothers grew bolder. They knew how to work the system, how to appear innocent. Charming. Generous. Was it their money? Their image? Or something more disturbing, something about how easily society trusts success and ignores suspicion? How many others like them are out there, walking free, hiding behind wealth and reputation? Their arrest was only the surface. The trial forced the world to confront a horror it never wanted to face. And even now, sentenced and locked away, Hakeem and Jordan still control the story. Because they're still holding onto the answers. Answers about victims we may never find. Crimes that will never be solved. And they've made one final move, silence. Which leaves the world asking. Should they have been caught sooner? Were their warnings everyone ignored? Did law enforcement miss something crucial? Or were Hakeem and Jordan simply that good at pretending to be normal? We want to hear what you think. Were the clues always there? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this case left you speechless, there's more to come. Hit like if you want to dive deeper into the darkest corners of true crime. Subscribe for the full story and turn on notifications because the truth? It's always more twisted than fiction. We'll see you in the next case. Thank you for staying with us through this chilling and complex case. Stories like that of Hakeem and Jordan are not just about horror, they're a sobering reminder of how deception can hide in plain sight, how systems can fail, and how deeply human behavior can confound even the most seasoned minds. While this narrative may sound like something out of fiction, it's rooted in patterns we've seen in real-life criminal psychology. Our goal in sharing these stories is not to glorify the darkness, but to learn from it, so we can recognize the signs, question what lies beneath the surface, and ultimately build a more aware and vigilant society. We'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our readers, listeners, and supporters who continue to engage with these deep dives. Your curiosity, empathy, and critical thinking are what make these conversations so important. We encourage respectful dialogue in the comments. Share your thoughts, your theories, or your takeaways from this case. And just a reminder, this content is created for educational and awareness purposes. While dramatized and simplified for storytelling clarity, the themes explored reflect real-world issues that deserve attention and understanding. If this story moved you, made you think, or opened your eyes, please like, share, and subscribe for more true crime breakdowns that go beyond the headlines. And always remember, this story is a dramatized and fictionalized interpretation inspired by real-world patterns and psychological behaviors observed in true crime cases. While certain elements may reflect real-life criminal dynamics, all characters, names, and events in this content are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. This content has been created for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to sensationalize crime or glorify violence, but rather to encourage critical thinking, promote awareness, and explore the complex psychology behind criminal behavior. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for sensitive or younger audiences, as the content may include depictions of violence, trauma, and criminal activity. If you or someone you know is affected by crime or trauma, we encourage seeking professional help or contacting your local support services. Staying informed is the first step in staying safe. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and take care of each other.